Ever get sucked into those big courtroom dramas? The kind that blow up in the news and you instantly find yourself thinking, did they get that right? Was that justice? Or was that a straight-up miscarriage of justice?
Yeah, for sure.
That's exactly what we're diving deep into today on The Deep Dive, the whole world of courtroom dramas, but going way deeper than the surface level stuff.
Right.
We've gathered some seriously interesting material, and our goal today is to really explore the intricacies behind these big decisions with you. We'll be highlighting some specific examples and insights that might even change how you see these cases.
You know, it's interesting because I think we all hold this image of the courtroom, right? It's supposed to be this neutral space where truth comes out and fairness wins.
Yeah.
But the stories that really grab us, like the ones we're going to unpack today, well, they often show us something a lot more complicated and sometimes even a little disturbing. So as we go through all of this, let's keep in mind that we're not just picking apart the legal outcomes. We're actually looking at a reflection of our society and our core values.
Yeah, that's a great point. So let's jump right into this idea of the courtroom as this central arena. It's almost like a theater, isn't it?
Absolutely.
These spaces become the stage where so many societal conflicts are played out. It's where we try to define right and wrong through legal processes. And whether it's a landmark case that totally reshaped how we understand the law or a really gripping trial that captures the public's imagination, these dramas have this incredible power to fascinate us, don't they?
What's really fascinating to me is the range of emotions these dramas stir up. I mean, think about it. Even as observers watching through the media, we feel outrage, we feel empathy, we feel confusion, and then sometimes maybe even a sense of closure, this inherent conflict. You know, the battle of different stories, the raw human element under this intense scrutiny, it's undeniably captivating.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And to really understand this, I think we need to look at some specific examples. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's start with a name that I'm sure everyone recognizes, O.J. Simpson. This was a larger-than-life football star, a huge celebrity who all of a sudden found himself right in the middle of this unbelievable murder trial back in 1995.
Right.
And it became a media frenzy, right? It felt like the whole world was glued to their screens.
It really did. And one of the moments that stuck with people, I think, was defense attorney Johnny Cochran's now famous line, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit," talking about that bloody glove, of course. That phrase, it became a cultural touchstone, almost like a symbol of the whole trial.
It really did. It really did. And it points to something really important, right?
Yeah.
The potential power of media coverage to shape how the public sees a case. And you could argue that it even influences how the trial itself plays out. The story that gets built around the evidence, the people involved, it all goes through this intense media filter.
Yeah.
And for anyone listening, I think it's worth considering how that might be shaping your own understanding of high-profile cases that are happening today.
I think that's so important. You know, public opinion can become this underlying current, whether we're aware of it or not, and it can impact everyone in the legal system.
Yeah.
Take the Simpson case, for example. You could argue that all that intense media scrutiny actually amplified discussions about race and police conduct, even if those issues weren't directly connected to the evidence.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, let's shift gears and head across the Atlantic to another case that drew a ton of international attention, Amanda Knox in Italy.
Right.
This is a whole different situation, isn't it?
Totally.
It's an American student accused of a serious crime, but now she's in a foreign legal system. What stands out about her case when we're talking about this idea of justice versus injustice?
Well, the really fascinating thing here is the dramatic back and forth of the legal decisions. Knox was convicted, then acquitted on appeal, then convicted again, and finally, after years of fighting in court, the Italian Supreme Court fully exonerated her. I think her case really shows us the potential for huge variations and even biases within different countries' legal systems. I mean, think about it. The rules for what evidence is allowed, the appeals process, the underlying cultural assumptions, these can all be completely different from one place to another and have a huge impact on the outcome.
Yeah, it's like a stark reminder that justice isn't this universal constant thing, is it?
Right.
What might be seen as a fair outcome in one legal system might be viewed totally differently somewhere else. The Amanda Knox case really brought that into focus.
Okay, the last key trial we wanted to look at is the case of Casey Anthony.
Okay.
This one was especially disturbing. A young mother accused of this unthinkable crime, murdering her own daughter. The level of public outrage was massive, almost visceral, because of the horrifying nature of the case. Oh, absolutely. The disappearance and then the discovery of Kaylee Anthony's remains, It's understandable why it led to such widespread public grief and anger. So when Casey Anthony was found not guilty, it triggered a huge wave of disbelief and outrage. It really made people question how our legal system works.
It did. And this is where people like Nancy Grace really came into the spotlight. She became this really vocal legal commentator on the case, expressing very strong opinions and really fueling the public debate about whether the justice system had failed in this case.
Right.
It sparked so many questions about the fairness of the verdict, especially given the incredibly emotional response people had to the case.
This brings up a really important question about the role of public opinion and media commentary in shaping our understanding of justice. While it's totally natural to have a strong emotional reaction to such a disturbing case, it also highlights this tension between the legal principle of presumed innocence and the very powerful feelings that these shocking crimes evoke.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving away from these specific high-profile trials for a minute, our research also uncovered some really surprising, almost unbelievable aspects of the legal world that don't always get a lot of attention.
Okay.
For example, the amount of time that can be spent just on jury selection in some of these major cases is mind-blowing.
Mm,
Sometimes the selection process actually takes longer than the trial itself.
right.
That's hard to wrap your head around. Why do you think that
It
is?
really is incredible. In cases where public awareness is super high and there's a big concern about potential biases among jurors, the process of choosing an impartial jury becomes extremely complex and time-consuming. Lawyers from both sides really dig deep, questioning potential jurors to try to uncover any preconceived notions that could, consciously or unconsciously sway their judgment and ultimately their verdict.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then there's this a fascinating and sometimes controversial area of forensic evidence.
Right.
We used to think of it as this absolute, undeniable truth, the gold standard, as one of our sources called it. But now we're realizing that it's not always as foolproof as we once believed.
That's such a crucial point. While forensic science has definitely come a long way, things like human error in collecting and handling evidence, the limitations of some scientific tests, and even the subjective interpretation of results, these can all introduce some uncertainty. It's not this perfect guarantee of truth that we often see in TV shows.
Yeah, you're right.
Have you ever seen forensic evidence presented in a way that seemed totally definitive, like, this is it, case closed, but then later found out it wasn't so clear cut?
Yeah, I think we all have. And I think that speaks to what you're saying, right? It's not always as black and white as it seems. But on the flip side, the development of DNA evidence has been revolutionary, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
Our source emphasized how it's helped exonerate so many people who were wrongly convicted. It's a powerful testament to how scientific progress can really help in the pursuit of justice.
It really is. DNA evidence has given us this incredible level of precision when it comes to identifying individuals, and in so many cases, it's been the key to proving someone's innocence without a doubt.
Right.
But, as our source also points out, this powerful technology also raises important questions about personal privacy and the potential for misuse of this sensitive genetic information. It's a technology with huge implications, both positive and potentially negative.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's like a double-edged sword in a way.
Right.
So for anyone listening who might be following these legal dramas in the news and feeling a little overwhelmed by how complicated they can be, our sources actually offered some practical tips for navigating this world. The first one that stood out to me was the importance of understanding basic legal jargon. It can feel like they're speaking a totally different language in those courtrooms sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. It can sound like a foreign language, but by taking some time to learn those common legal terms and concepts, you can really improve your ability to follow what's happening and grasp the subtle points of the legal arguments. It helps to demystify a process that can often feel very opaque.
Yeah, absolutely. And this next tip is crucial, especially these days when we're bombarded with information from all sides. The importance of actively seeking out multiple news sources when you're following a case. It's so easy to get stuck in an echo chamber where you're only hearing one side of the story.
Absolutely. By making an effort to get different perspectives from a variety of reputable news outlets, you can develop a much more complete and balanced understanding of the case, the evidence, and all the different interpretations surrounding it. This helps you form your own informed opinions rather than just accepting one potentially biased narrative.
Yeah, I think that's so key, especially these days.
Yeah.
Our source also warned us to be really aware of potential media bias.
Right.
It's almost built into how the news is reported, isn't it? The way a story is framed, the language used, it all subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, shape how we view the people involved and the events that happen.
Oh, it's a constant challenge for anyone who consumes news. Developing this critical awareness of the potential biases in the sources you're relying on is essential for being an informed citizen. Ask yourself, who's reporting this story? What might their agenda be? And does their coverage seem to present a balanced view of the situation?
Yeah, those are good questions to ask.
Yeah.
Another really insightful point from our material was the importance of considering the bigger cultural context and any relevant legal precedents that could affect how a trial plays out.
Yeah.
What might be standard legal practice in one place could be totally different somewhere else.
Exactly. Legal systems are deeply connected to the history, traditions, and cultural norms of a specific region or country. Understanding these foundational factors can give you really important context for interpreting the decisions that are made in court.
Yeah, that's a great point. And finally, a skill that's super valuable in all areas of life, but especially when you're following these complex legal dramas, is critical thinking.
Absolutely.
Don't just accept information at face value. Question it.
Right. That leads to a really important question we should all be asking ourselves.
Hmm.
Are we really analyzing the arguments being presented? Are we thinking about other possible explanations or interpretations of the evidence? Are we reflecting on the potential long-term effects of these verdicts, not just on the people directly involved, but on society as a whole?
Yeah, I think those are really key questions. Now, for those who want to go even deeper into this world, our sources had some really interesting, maybe even unconventional suggestions.
All
The
right.
first was to actually attend a local trial. I have to admit, I've never done that. But it sounds like a really direct way to see the legal system in action.
It can be a truly eye-opening experience. Being physically present in the courtroom gives you this visceral understanding of the dynamics at play, like the interactions between the lawyers, the judge, the witnesses. It brings the whole legal process to life in a way that watching it on TV just can't.
Yeah, I can imagine. And the other suggestion, which is a big commitment but an amazing opportunity, was to actually consider serving on a jury if you're ever called.
Right.
It's a huge civic responsibility, but what an incredible way to learn about the judicial process from the inside out.
It really is a fundamental civic duty, and it offers a completely unique perspective on how our legal system works at its core. It's a chance to be directly involved in the pursuit of justice in your community.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of courtroom dramas, what's the big takeaway here? It seems pretty clear that these cases are much more than just legal decisions.
Definitely. They act like a mirror, reflecting our shared values, our anxieties as a society, and our ongoing, often imperfect, search for justice. They force us to grapple with these tough questions about guilt, innocence, fairness, and the role of the law in our lives and in our society as a whole.
And for you, the listener, our sources really encourage you to stay vigilant,
Hmm.
to stay informed, and to always question the narratives that you're presented with, not just in legal cases, but in all the information you encounter.
And this brings up a really crucial point about our roles as informed citizens. How can we actively contribute to making sure we have a fair and just legal system? It requires us to stay engaged, to keep thinking critically, and to be willing to stand up for the core principles of justice.
Well, thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of courtroom dramas. It's been a fascinating conversation.
It really has.
And as a final thought to leave you with, think about a specific courtroom drama that you know well. It could be one of the cases we discussed today or another one that's always stayed with you. Now, considering everything we've talked about, ask yourself this. Do you really know the whole story? And what does your answer to that question tell you about how we understand and pursue justice? We encourage you to keep exploring the complexities of the legal world. There's always more to learn.